In a recent video I made, we talked about finding fish on a grass flat, but I did get some comments on how do I find fish whenever my flats do not have grass. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Okay, so first thing that we're going to do is we are going to talk about depth changes, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge depth change. It doesn't have to be a 3 or 4 foot depth change. It could just be a few inches. Those depth changes on these flats are what these fish are going to use to move around. Now, sometimes they'll be on the outside edges over here, but then other times they're going to be on the inside edges, and what they're going to do is they're going to use these depth changes here as a way for protection, because a lot of times what happens is the inside of these bars right here will actually be too shallow for predatory things like dolphins and sharks, so they'll get some protection there. And another thing that they'll use this sandbar for is they'll use this as something that they can pin their prey up against to make it easier to catch. So anytime you're fishing the flats, these are great areas to check. Now the next place that we're going to talk about is underwater humps. So inshore fishing is not unlike offshore fishing. We want to fish areas that are different than the surrounding spots. So if we get a big area that there's a whole lot of nothing, but we find these little humps that are underwater, these are going to be the type of places that these fish are going to relate to, especially if there's bait around. And then we can turn on our 1 foot contours and we can actually zoom in and see that most of the surrounding area is going to be in that 5 or 6 foot range, but then we have that shallow depth that goes up to 2 feet. It's just like fishing offshore, where you're just looking for something that's different than the surrounding area. So next thing that we need to look for is going to be oysters, and a good way to look for those, if we go into our Smart Fishing Spots app and we click on our oyster bed layer right there, then we're going to see some oysters that are going to pop up. Now this isn't going to be all the oysters in the area. This will be the ones that are going to be monitored by whatever state that they're in, but it will give you an idea of where oysters are at. Now any of these oysters do have the ability to hold fish, but the ones that are really going to be the best ones are going to be the ones that are combined with other areas. If you look right here, we've got some oysters right here. We also have a little bit of an island right there, and we've got a point right there. In between, we got some deeper water. So what happens is you got a constricting point that's going to accelerate that current flow over here, and then you've got this hard structure. So not only do you have more water flow, you've got the depth change, and then you got the structure. Places like this that have the most amount of combined structures together are going to be where you want to look at. So say you got the water that's moving in this direction. It's coming from this back country and it's moving out. We got an outgoing tide. Well, a lot of times what will happen is your redfish will be on the back side of that water flow, looking for a break in that current and getting anything that's getting swept by. Your flounder are going to be in the deeper water right here, and then also your trout, they'll be in the current right along this grass line, and they're looking for anything that's getting swept out. So a place like this is a great place to pick up a lot of different types of fish. Now this next type of spot that we're going to talk about, this is something that a lot of people overlook, they don't think about, and that's going to be your bottom compositions, or more about the transitions between the types of bottom composition. And what I'm talking about is going from muddy bottoms to a sandy bottom, maybe a rocky bottom, maybe a shell bottom, but anytime that you have a transition from one type of bottom to the next, fish will hang out on that and they'll use that as ways to move around. Now wade fishermen will know this better than anybody because they can actually feel it with their feet. Whenever you're in a boat, you might not exactly know the composition of the bottom unless you're really knowledgeable about the area, but wade fishermen can actually feel this. Now this is more important when it comes typically in your transition periods, like in spring and the fall. You're going to get fish that are going to go from a hard bottom to a muddy bottom in the winter time, and then come springtime, whenever they're going from the winter to the warmer months, they're going to go from those muddy bottoms typically out to the firmer bottoms. So spring and fall, this becomes really important. But there are some species that throughout the year are going to hang around softer bottoms, and that redfish are scavenger type feeders, and they'll feed on stuff that's going to be in that softer bottom. So marine worms, shrimp, also crabs, they hang around a lot of that softer bottom. So a lot of times you will see redfish hanging around softer bottom. But if you're specifically looking for trout and snook, typically in the warmer months, they're going to be on this firmer bottom. So definitely look for those transition zones from one type of bottom composition to the next type of bottom composition. And if you can combine that with a depth change and with a food source, that's a great place to look for some fish. Now the next type of place that we're going to look at is going to be a man-made seawall or a structure like this one. This is another one of those areas that will give the fish a way to pin their prey up against something solid, and it makes it easier for them to catch. The ones that I find that are the best are typically the ones that are near lighted structure at nighttime. These are going to hold more bait fish, and it's going to hold more predators that way. So if you've got any of these in your area that's lit up at nighttime, it's a great place to look. Even during the day, there's going to be some predatory fish that typically hang around seawalls like this, especially if there's some deeper water nearby. So this next spot that we're going to look at, this is a classic example of combining as many different types of structure as possible into one area. So if you notice right here, we've got an island that's got a rock jetty that's situated in an area that we have got shallow and deeper water. So the deeper water is going to be this darker area right here, and the shallower water is going to be this lighter area. And we've got trees right here that is structure. We've got a jetty rock wall that's structure. And if you look at the ends of the jetty rock wall, they're actually in some deeper water. So we've got all different kinds of things going on. Even right here, if you notice the bottom's a little different color, it's that brown color, that's going to be a different bottom composition. This is probably going to be a little bit softer than the sand that's out here. So not only do we have ambush points for the predators at the ends of these jetties right here, we also have a way that they can corral bait and the bait can't get anywhere. So this is a great ambush spot. And they have the mangroves here that they can actually go underneath there, use that as shelter, or they can look for crustaceans like crabs and shrimp in here. This is a perfect prime example of a type of place that has the most amount of structure in one small area. Now, one word about this is you don't want to just pick this spot out, go to it and fish it all day long. It's a rather small area and you'll know quickly if there's going to be fish around. The better plan is to find more areas like this. Find 4, 5, or 6 areas that are like this, that are nearby that you can hit. If you don't find any fish in your first spot, then you can go to your next spot, and eventually going through and working through these different spots, you'll be able to find some fish. So I hope this helps you out, and if you have any other questions, make sure and visit our fishing tips page where you can do a search on just about any subject matter that you want, and you should be able to find a video that will help you out. So if you got any questions or comments, go ahead and put those down below. As always, I appreciate you watching. Have a great one. Bye.